Okay, so today we have Nasir Ali or Ali Nasir. And Ali, it's great to have you. I just love your story of starting out in basically a trailer park and building up your real estate portfolio and a number of other assets from there. So great to have you. I'd love to hear kind of the backstory of how you got to where you are now.
Thank you, Bruce. Thank you for having me. I'm excited to be with you.
So give us a little clue. How did you start out?
I'll give the backstory very briefly. I want to mention that I'm eighth generation in commercial real estate.
Oh, wow.
Going back to the bartering days in India. And so I've been able to trace our family going back then, and I think my kids hopefully will be the ninth generation in this space. They're old enough to start getting in. But to answer your question, I was blessed to I'm blessed to have a father who's just a serial entrepreneur who's been passionate in real estate and has been doing creative deals all his life, even with coming from very modest backgrounds. And he built up a nice portfolio of single family homes during the original Iran war crisis, or just prior to that. But during that crisis is when essentially everything exploded, Bruce. And we went from 120 homes in Orange County, single family homes, down to really just dwindled down to, I would say, probably 20 or 30 that he was able to leverage some equity out of. And it all just came crashing down like a deck of cards because, as you may recall, interest rates went to something like as much as 20.5%.
Oh, yeah. The Carter years, the famous inflation years.
That's right. And so, long story short, I'll try to keep this brief, but that collapsed. And we had, prior to that, relocated from New York to California, and we took a 3-month journey over the summer in a brand new station wagon and a trailer. And we stayed at KOAs throughout the country. I was blessed to see. That's probably one of those. I've traveled the world since then, but that's one of the most memorable trips for me and my siblings, and probably my parents. And we saw the country. We stayed at KOAs, and I think that started registering my father's mind. And when that collapse happened by late 70s, early 80s, it was done. We were done, and he was able to salvage enough to put a down payment on a KOA.
Wow.
And so we first purchased, July 9th, 1981, he purchased a KOA. The previous owner's name, by the way, was Joe. And my name is super complicated. It's complicated for many people. You can imagine how difficult it was back in the 80s in Central Valley. So I became KOA Joe, the new KOA Joe.
KOA Joe. All right. Yeah. Okay.
And so, we grew up, I grew up as a typical immigrant family. We all operated the business. We all learned the business. And my father was very generous. It still is about, he always said, I'm not going to give you fish. I'm going to teach you how to fish. And so he was teaching me how to fish at a very young age. And so we operated that park, and we learned very quickly, Bruce, that, hey, this business is great, but it's kind of seasonal. And, we need to eat all year round, not just in the summer when they're coming to see Yosemite or Sequoia Kingswood. So we started putting in trailers in some of the back, the rows in the back, and we rented them out permanent, long-term, I should say. And so we rented them out to construction crews and retirees and single folks, or anybody who understood the concept and embraced the concept of tiny homes and ADUs before we had all these words and before it became popular.
Right.
So that became a steady revenue stream, and that's where it triggered us. That said, okay, we realized that my dad said, okay, we need to get in the mobile home park business as it was then. Now, politically correct term, there's manufactured housing communities, as you rightfully use, and I try to use more and more. So we decided that was, even though it's less, perhaps less. What's the word I want to use? It's
glamorous.
It's certainly less glamorous, but also probably a lower rate of return compared to a cash business. Where you operate, the KOA is a real business. There's a lot of moving parts, and it's a retail operation. We wanted something more passive or semi-passive and less risk, and also maybe it's a slighter lower rate of return, but it's also less risk. And so we decided that was the path for us, and we haven't looked back, Bruce. I personally and the family have done some other asset classes, which we don't need to get into depth about, parking, for example, or strip centers, and I did fine in those. But I'm second generation in the manufactured housing community by choice. in this industry by choice because
So
of all of the dynamics.
give us a clue. Manufactured housing seems to be coming to the forefront again right now, and perhaps obviously because it's an affordable solution to housing, and people need that solution, and particularly in, as you said earlier, in Texas and Florida, it is becoming a big deal. So
That's
give us
right.
a little.
I did a recent presentation entitled from trailer trash to the darling asset class. And that's exactly what we've seen. It's just been amazing to go experience this journey firsthand, where we were considered the slumlords and trailer parks, all the stigma that comes with trailer parks and mobile home parks and whatnot. But I think over the years, we call them manufactured homes now for a good reason. The structure, the quality, the overall appeal has dramatically, substantially improved. And I would say, for those who would question the quality of that home, try taking a stick-built home down the freeway 60 miles an hour, and see how it holds up. These homes are transported and then still set up. So despite all the noise about how, the stigma and the noise how they're doing tornadoes and whatnot, I think we've as an industry as a whole, particularly our associations like MHI, have done a great job of trying to overcome that stigma, and that combined with since the pandemic, the hybrid work, the remote work, the concepts of living in secondary and tertiary markets where you don't have to necessarily be in a primary market, and also Gen Z just being open, Gen Z and millennials kind of being open to these ideas. All this is kind of combined into where people are now, do consider this. In fact, I want to give Silicon Valley, where I am based here, as a perfect example. You right there in Sunnyvale or Santa Clara, some of those towns where these big tech firms are, you have these communities, and they're getting more and more occupied, by the techies, earning
Right.
well, but they get it. It. And so it's a big change for us, Bruce.
So I think what you're saying is the demand for manufactured housing for trailer parks, if you will, is becoming higher and higher.
Oh, absolutely. I think the demand is absolutely becoming higher. I think the shortage is about 4 million housing units in terms of shortage that we have as a nation right now. Right. And I think that from most reports, that's on the low end. Some people would argue it's almost double that. But there's a huge shortage, and that issue, the shortage combined with the stigma kind of being reduced. We were dealing, and we still deal with stigma. We still deal with NIMBY, not my backyard, and all those things. We still, we still are challenged with municipalities who would rather have higher tax revenue from mid-rises or high-rises versus our communities. We still have those challenges, but the huge demand for affordable housing and the new generations embracing the new quality that we provided is I think we're on the map. And I think that also combined with Bruce, this is not necessarily, I'll take it. It's not necessarily a way we would want to win as an industry, but the fact that all of these other commercial real estate asset classes are saturated for investors, for funds, for REITs. They've every other asset class, for the most part, I think is saturated. You see a frenzy almost of everyone now, REITs, private equity groups, high net worth individuals, even family offices. Everybody's suddenly trying to come into and aren't coming into our space, and now everyone's an expert. You got a lot of experts out there, and so. But it's I love it. I love the fact that people have come in, because it's actually creating a community where ultimately the residents are winning. Investors are winning. Communities are winning. So I'm fine with it.
So has the state helped you at all? Are any of the state laws helping to develop modular homes?
Yes and no. Theoretically, yes.
Theoretically, yeah, right. Okay. Yeah.
Theoretically, yes. In actuality, in reality, I we'll see. I think the only time will tell. There's a recent state bill that passed, as you may be alluding to, which allows communities to expand by 10% of their existing permitted units or pads.
Right.
Kind of a quick path to avoid all of the typical red tape and costs and time. A quick path to get at least 10% if you have the additional land to justify it available. And so that has passed. It's being tested now in some markets, and we'll see. We'll see. I hope it works out because we are I think a significant part or portion of the solution to that 4 million number.
Right.
And we should get all the support from the government agencies, be it local, state, or federal, to solve this crisis.
Well, a lot of people, there's a lot of companies out there now, I'm sure you're aware, that will take your current single family house lot and say, okay, we're going to drop this ADU, this manufactured ADU right into your backyard. And I don't know how successful they've been, but they're certainly a kind of a popular item right now.
It is absolutely, especially in California, where we saw the fires recently downtown. We saw a lot of folks trying to execute putting in manufactured homes as ADUs, and so I've been indirectly kind of keeping a pulse on some of those things, and I think it's certainly a viable solution. It's just a matter of getting through some of this minutia, frankly, to make it happen. So they're working on it.
You said you're using some AI in your business now. What's going on with that?
Well, initially, thank you for asking. Initially we were just doing some basic things with ChatGPT, and maybe I shouldn't be throwing out the specific LLM brand names for marketing purposes, but we were just using them for basic admin purposes or support things and whatnot. But now, recently, we've actually just acquired the subscription for Claude Code, and my team, the marketing team in particular, the finance team for our fund, RISE360 Ventures, these folks are extremely excited about that. We already have several players who've been using Claude individually, and I've been using AI personally, but now we're actually bringing it in, kind of integrating it almost in every department within our company.
Oh, wow. How many people work with you?
We just started this fund. So let me give you the backstory before I answer that question, is that I've been involved in our family office for decades, right? And the family office is kind of now stabilized and looking at options of maybe possibly an exit or whatnot. So that's on autopilot, and I'm not involved day to day in operations at all.
Right.
Other than, and maybe, on occasion where there's not operations, but a liquidity event or some sort of course, I may get involved. But in the last really 6 months, my partner and I, Daniel Nguyen, and I, we've been looking at syndications and funds. We did a small syndication about 18 months ago, but in the last 6 months, we actually kind of morphed into RISE360 Ventures, which is a fund specifically for this asset class. And to answer your question, we went from the 2 of us to 20 of us overnight.
Oh my God!
Wow. But tying this back to AI, frankly, with all the support through AI, I don't know that we need to grow much more in terms of actual folks. So we built out the IR team, the finance team, the marketing, and all. So we've got leaders in every space with
well, that's an interesting paradigm because, so with 20 people, you think you now can hit the same amount that you might have not done. Well, you would have needed much more previously. So that's very interesting. So what's your crystal ball saying? I think what I'm hearing is that not necessarily the sky is the limit, but certainly manufactured housing is certainly on the upswing here, and maybe for the next 5 or 10 years, who knows?
When people ask me when's the best time to buy a mobile home park or a community, I say it's the same answer as planting a tree. The best time
is a good time.
Right. Best time was probably 20 years ago, and the next best time is today. I don't care about, we can always adapt. We've seen at least 9 downturns in the economy since we bought our first community, going back to the original Iran war crisis, but also the savings and loans and the dot-com burst and, 2008 and 2020, and I'm probably forgetting several in between. We've seen all of those, and every time, Bruce, I can tell you that in a good economy, this asset class has performed well. In a bad economy, it's been amazing.
Yeah, bad economy, it's probably even better. So
exactly, when everybody comes down a notch in their lifestyle on the totem pole because of affordability, if you want the American dream, if you want to own your home, if you don't want to share a wall and you want your own garage or driveway, your carport, you want a backyard, you want to be able to have a pet, that you want, all these things, and you want to be able to improve your home, make the improvements, we're actually the last stop, the most affordable stop. And how else can you buy a home for $300,000-400,000? And I'm saying the high end really because of the Bay Area and Silicon Valley. Where else can you buy that in the Bay Area? You just can't. And so anyway, but if you want, Bruce, we can talk a little bit about the geopolitics and the macroeconomics and how it's impacting our industry.
That'd be fun. I mean, we are in a moment, obviously.
Right. And I think, it's easy to focus on the new Iran war crisis. And I won't expand on that too much because I think there's a lot of information out there already. But there's other things that are lurking that are also equally important in my mind, or at least, compelling now and will be in the foreseeable future. For example, we're expecting at least $500 million worth of commercial real estate defaults in the next 6 to 18 months. The pretend and extend, model is nearly done. You can't just keep extending these notes and these loans out. And so those defaults are going to impact small banks and regional banks more than anybody else. And those are the same banks that lend to mobile home parks and manufactured housing. So we need to think about those headwinds and tailwinds that'll come from that. The yen, the Japanese yen. Before everybody was around the world, you would see globally, you'd see money being invested in Japan and then borrowed at 0% in Japan, and reinvested in the treasuries here, which would then trickle down to our banks and our commercial real estate deals. That whole strategy is now. I wouldn't say it's gone away, but it's going away, right? Because they're earning more on the yen in Japan now. They're paying, a few points. I think 2 or 3. Their interest rates up to 2 to 3% there, if I'm not mistaken. And as that continues to climb, there's less incentive to buy our T-bills, our treasury, our bonds.
Right.
And so that directly, ultimately impacts our borrowing capabilities as commercial real estate investors.
Well, I heard recently that there's $800 billion worth of short-term notes that, you talked about the pretend and extend situation. And as you say, I mean, 800 billion, somebody's going to get caught. There's no doubt.
Yeah, it's a huge number and it's inevitable. It's only math. By the way, when I get into some of these conversations, I can become politically incorrect, but I want people to know that it's not even a political conversation. It's not about red or blue. It's not about, patriotism as much as I am very grateful and blessed to be an American. It's, for us as investors, it's about arithmetic, right? It's about the math. And so that's what I'm focused on. And again, there are other issues, whether it's the rare earth minerals that are being kind of weaponized, or what we've done with sanctions and tariffs that might impact long-term, ability to borrow or invest and whatnot. All of these things are playing into, I think what's coming is maybe if I'm, let me say this, it's small chance, my guess based on the gurus that I watch and learn from and read, but it sounds like there's at least a 10 to 20% chance of something far beyond what we saw in the mid to late 70s in terms of a downturn.
Wow. Yeah.
Much more than 2008, and maybe as bad as what we saw with the stagflation and all of the things in the late 70s that we saw. Stagflation is the topic at hand today. And and some argue that it might be as bad as what, like the Great Depression levels and whatnot. So not to be doom and gloom, the cause of it all, But the positive in all of this is that, there's always, think of the Warren Buffett model, right? When everybody's sidelined, when the herd is sidelined and everyone's afraid to act, that's when the most compelling opportunity. So when you asked earlier about, the forecast and the crystal ball, I think, sure, anytime's a good time. The next 18 months might be some of the best times to be acquiring commercial real estate and this asset class in particular.
Well, I think we need to talk in another 3 to 6 months and see how the world events and the economic events and see what's going on throughout the process here. So in the meantime, though, Ali, where shall people get a hold of you?
Oh, well, thank you for asking. I would say go to the website if you'd like a free detailed report about the industry and about the economy. We have a detailed, extensive report of the things we just talked about, and that's available at rise360ventures.com. Rise, the number 360ventures.com. And you can also find me on LinkedIn, of course.
So rise360.com. I was just looking at it before we started talking. Great website. So everybody check it out.
That's a wrap on today's journey through the SF commercial real estate scene. Ready to share your story? Visit sfcommercialconversations.com/guest. Your insights could lead the next conversation.